When companies scale from small to large, maybe private to public, sometimes they don't view the CHRO as an important role. What should a director do about that?
Again, the silence is deafening. I'll be happy to jump in there first. There's a model that I saw first, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago that plots companies on an arc. And at the beginning of the arc, companies are in the explorer mode. My idea and my concept, is it going to work? Generally have one or two people who are highly engaged, work lots of hours, but there's no lack of clarity about the vision. You go from the explorer stage into, the entrepreneurial stage into the explorer stage. Entrepreneurial is when it's small and when you're thinking about the idea. Explorer stage is looking for proof of concept. If the concept work, you go into the conqueror barbarian stage, which is I'm chasing the business, and then you go into the administrator stage. The question really is referring to the administrator stage. At the administrator stage, you have to put in infrastructure, process, systems, human resources. Otherwise, the business collapses. So you can get up the arc to the administrator stage and forget that you have to have those things. It really is understanding what all the supporting processes are when you're in that administrative stage to support the business to be able to get into a growth stage and to accelerate it into the future.
You know, I have worked with some companies that are in that mode, doing some assessments and work. And I think for directors in particular, it's actually encouraging and being the person to say, you need this. And I know some board members that that have done this with some of the companies that I worked with, to say, this is something that you need. Here's what I've seen. Here's the impact that it has. And we're with you, and we're willing to put that investment in place with you to make that happen. So I think that it also takes the courage of the directors to actually push that issue with that company, whether it's a founder, whether it's a new CEO coming out of private to public, et cetera. But I think it takes that.
Thank you. And I see, Sam, you have your hand raised. I think you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I'm off of mute. Yeah, I'm Sam Smolik. Hey, this has been a terrific discussion. And one comment I wanted to make, earlier we talked about management by walking around and getting to know the people and understanding the culture. And I think that's really important for board members to meet at least once a year at a manufacturing site or some location where the people are there. But I've seen two types of CEOs and how they feel about that. There's one that says, I welcome you to do it. I want you to get out there and give me the feedback that you hear. And then there's some CEOs that are very possessive and defensive. They almost don't want you talking to the people. Maybe they're hiding the dirty laundry, or I don't know what it is, but I just think it's a signal to board members if a CEO does not appreciate the talent of the board members that they have and use those to their full extent. So that's just something that I've observed through the years, and be on the lookout. You want the right kind of CEO out there that says, hey, come help me. Let's make this company great.
Yeah, and I think, Sam, you're absolutely right. And things like tone at the top, attitude surveys will start to give you data that'll reinforce your instinct that this person isn't a very open person, that they're managing thumbs down and from the top down. So getting the data that reinforces your instinct that this is not a person who's open and honest about everything that's going on is very helpful.
Hey, Sam, one thing I you know, as I was listening to your comment, I think that what made people great CEOs in the past are not necessarily what make people great CEOs today. And I think that your comments about those that don't want to use the expertise on the board or allow you to walk around might be those CEOs of the past, because that's their focus was on the numbers. That was kind of it. And you don't see anything else. And I think the workforce of the future and businesses of the future need those people that not only ask for help, get help, whether it's from board members or their workforce, and are pretty open, such that walking around is no issue. So I think thinking about whether it's the right CEO or it's the CEO that you need for the future, I think it's a great discussion that or a comment that you raised.
As an investor, we're always on the outlook for imperial CEOs. And this is one of those signs. I mean, that's just one step away from CEOs saying, directors, we don't want you to talk to the shareholders. Well, wait a second. The directors work for us. You know, that shouldn't be. Sam, I saw you trying to say something. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, to Melinda's comment, you know, the old adage, all of us are smarter than any of us. If you get a CEO and a board that's aligned and motivated to build a long-term sustainable company, it's powerful. And, you know, everybody's got to trust each other.
So we have one more question. It's maybe a little bit on the edge of this conversation, but I think it's worthwhile because it goes to the heart of the people issue. And it is, we are in disruptive times, specifically geopolitical risk and fast changing technology. How much should a board be concerned?
And the answer is they should be concerned. Most boards have either risk committee or risk profile, and they have a fairly extensive view of what those things are. And you're looking at them as near term, short term, or longer term. And they are looked at in that way, so that while geopolitical may not be a short term, it may be something that you're thinking about longer term, particularly if you're thinking about international locations, or if you're like many of the businesses that I have, you have lots of your suppliers in China and you're thinking about moving things out of China. How do you think about that? It wasn't a priority a couple of years ago. It's a huge priority now. So some of those things, but having it on as conversations so that it's always in front of the board, and sometimes it's going to move to the front, sometimes it'll move to the secondary, and sometimes it'll go to tertiary, but having a robust sort of risk profile for your business. And I think John will probably jump in because this is the kind of stuff he likes to see. But having a robust, honest, and thorough risk profile for your business is critical, and it includes a lot of those issues.
You know, geopolitical and technological were both components of that question. My big concern over the short term is the technology piece. AI is poised to be such a disruptor from a human capital perspective over the next several years. We're taking a very careful look at how companies are governing the implementation of AI so that they don't disrupt the workforce any more than necessary. On the other hand, AI is going to be a great tailwind to company efforts over the next few years too. So how do you balance those two things? I think that's a core responsibility of the board to be thinking about. And I think that's probably one area where boards are less equipped to manage risk than they would like to be today.
And Gina, I think you have your hand up.
I do, yeah. Thank you. Good morning. I appreciated the term earlier, human capital ecosystem, because it is about certainly managing the individual, but there are those things, and I saw it when I was at the Pentagon, and when you talk about kind of walking around leadership, it came up doggone at every town hall, which is childcare. Right. And this thing that is disproportionately affected our younger women. And unfortunately would leave folks sooner. We'd lose folks sooner than they were ready to leave as a result of this challenge with younger folks in particular. So I'd welcome kind of how you all as the board have thought about other parts of the ecosystem that are so critical to your point, not only about the strength of the business, but also reflects just a true understanding of some of the day-to-day challenges that affect the quality of life and quality of, I'll just say quality of service at the company. So something like childcare, if you could speak to something like that, or maybe something else in the ecosystem that you all grappled with. Thanks so much.
I think that this kind of goes back to the idea of having a highly competent human resources capital manager, different than sort of chief people officer, but thinking about it as somebody who really manages my human capital in a thorough way. That person should have, as part of their responsibility, understanding what kind of goods, services, and processes we're offering to our workforce. Are we being responsive to them? And the board hopefully has enough visibility to that person has enough comfort to be able to talk to the board about those kind of issues and bring them up so that the board has an understanding of it. On boards where I have served and do serve as head of the compensation committee, I always have a relationship with the CHRO, and I talk to the CHRO on a regular basis, not just about the traditional incentives, but I think about childcare as an incentive. Pay is only one piece of incentive, right? So there's all kinds of comprehensive incentives, and you want to have thoughtful conversations about those incentives in a way that's keeping your workforce motivated and focused on the jobs that they have to do. Childcare, one of many, many others.
And I think the ecosystem questions or issues, if you know what the makeup of the workforce is, you know what questions to ask about what other pieces of that eco are important to your organization. Because it may or may not be childcare for one part of the organization. It might be elder care. I'm making this up, right? Because of where your workforce is today. I'm not saying it might not be something for the future that's necessary, but I think asking those questions is pretty important. And I agree with Theo. It's usually at that compensation committee asking some of those types of questions makes a ton of sense. By the way, one thing I didn't mention earlier that I actually was about it was kind of akin to the walking around, but I would also think about opportunities as board members where you can engage where it seems really natural. So for example, are there ways that you do a town hall, or maybe pieces of the board might do a town hall with some of the employees? Maybe it's a women's town hall, maybe it's a male town hall, maybe it's a people of color town hall, depending upon what your board makeup is, so that people can ask board members questions more broadly than the people that they're generally exposed to. And just, I think of those natural opportunities, because there's times in the world of things that are happening that board members have a perspective that might be different than the executives. And it also makes you feel like you know those people that are providing oversight to your organization. And I think it's really important. Sorry, I apologize for going off topic just a little bit.
We have one more question, and we're just about out of time. And it's a little bit, I think it's going to be a difficult one for this group, but I'll go ahead and throw it out there, and I can take it myself. From a technical hiring standpoint, I find that senior management often hires the wrong AI leadership people. How can a board help with this? That is a tough question, because this is such an evolving field. And it's a relatively new field. In fact, before last May, probably most of board members hadn't even heard of AI, or it was in the background. I think the board has to start becoming educated itself, along with management teams. And there are many ways to do that. Reading articles probably isn't one of them, but attending seminars and interfacing with the technical teams is perhaps another one. I do think this is going to be a challenge. It's a tight field right now. It's evolving. It's still relatively new. And but I appreciate the question and understand the frustration. And really, until the people doing the hiring become a little bit more educating themselves, it's probably going to continue being a challenge. I'll let anybody else comment on that.
I'm going to stick John on the front of the grill since he had such a strong point of view about AI.
You know, yesterday I met with the Screen Actors Guild and the Actors Guild over the strike that they're having right now. And one of the central tenets to that situation is use of AI. And the workforce is there, 14,000 screenwriters. Sorry, I may have this backwards, 140 something thousand actors. they are very concerned about their long-term viability as a career option because of AI. And the more that we talk to companies, the more we understand that there are employee bases all over the place that are very, very nervous about implementation of AI and what that means about the future of their careers, of their work. And it's creating a bit of a culture disruption in a lot of companies. I think there's going to be some stumbling before we figure out what the right way is to manage this. And no one's got it perfect yet. Honeywell's been dabbling in AI for 50 years. They're probably the ones that are furthest along AI before it was called AI. Leadership is a bit of a problem because no one knows what that leadership looks like. No one knows what the key issues for success are yet.
If I could, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to drop in a comment. I work for I'm sorry, I'm the board of an AI machine learning company that actually pioneered dynamic pricing about 35 years ago in the airline industry. And I'll tell you one thing we've learned is that you hear the phrase, less is more. When you're pioneering into a new area, more is more. And what I mean by that is this is where cognitive diversity really comes into play. We don't know where AI is going, where it's going to take us. So the more people you have with a differentiated point of view that are in the discussion, the better chance you have of seeing what's coming down the road. So my advice would be to not be too narrow about who's involved in that conversation, but to broaden those discussions so you get that cognitive diversity that allows you to see things that you may not have seen before.
Lee, I think the point I would add to that is I don't think any of us as board directors are going to be experts in this area, just like we may not be experts in cybersecurity. But I think opening yourself up to reading and asking questions, I'll do my little shameless plug for NACD. Sherry started out with the governance outlook for 2023. There's so much spectacular information in there, including how directors to think about being stewards of human capital, reading that information so that you can ask good questions, being in forums. I'm not sure if it's on the agenda for Washington, D.C., but hopefully many of you will be in D.C. and be able to take advantage of some of the educational opportunities down there. It's having that ongoing curiosity about information and pushing yourself into uncomfortable situations so that you can learn a little more and ask better questions.